Good morning, everyone. Scott Weidenfeller from Graywall Law. I just want to thank you all for being here this morning. And we're proud to represent these families in a claim to try and drive change for Oxford, to force policy change at this point. The new school year is about 10 weeks away. And so these families have children that are going back into the school. And so this lawsuit really seeks to force change by federal court order, by equitable and injunctive relief. We seek a court order forcing the school to be transparent and to make certain changes. That includes third-party investigation, to stop minimizing threats of violence, to communicate clearly with the parents, for transparency, also for training for these school administrators and kids who are suicidal, for these students to be identified and for action to be taken. There are some harmful policies that are in place currently at Oxford, and including, if there's no disciplinary issue, you can't keep the student or send the student home. And we know from historically that, these shooters are male, that their students are former students, and that over 80% of them are suicidal at the time that these events take place. And so for the safety of all these Oxford families, and really for families around the country, it's time for change. And so we're proud to represent these families today. And you're going to be hearing from 4 different family members here to talk about their specific concerns and why we're filing this case. I will just note that none of the families in this federal lawsuit are seeking any monetary compensation. They're just asking, hey, we need some change, and we need change from the courts because the school board and the administration has been so slow to take action and to make these changes. They even have refused multiple times Dana Nessel's investigation. So with that, I will turn it over to the parents. And John, did you want me to introduce the first speaker?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, our first speaker this morning, her name is Andrea Jones. Andrea, could you please address your comments?
Sure, thank you. November 30th, 2021. This will forever be the day that altered the natural course of events in our children's lives. We had finally made it back after 2 years of the pandemic. They were excited to go back and be in the company of their friends and teachers. Within months, the climate changed. There was a general uneasiness that began to seep through in their conversations and their actions. It seemed going to school was often a somber event at times, increasing with each threat, resulting in some kids wanting to stay home as they did not feel safe at school. Then the unimaginable happened. We lost 4 bright, beautiful souls and several others who were physically injured. However, we all carry scars from that day. In the week following the shooting, details began to emerge regarding meetings that took place with the shooter and his parents. School officials were vague in their statements and withholding even the names of those involved. On December 4th, our then superintendent announced that there would be a third-party review to investigate the tragedy. Shortly after, the Attorney General offered to complete this investigation at no cost to the district, and the school board declined. Parents began inquiring about the investigation at the board meetings, but were deflected. Parents also addressed safety concerns and the lack of transparency in the communications from the district. Many wrote emails that went unanswered. We wanted to know what updates to security and policies were being done to ensure the safe return of our children to their care. The trust had been shattered, and it was their duty to restore it. After months without answers, we were given a return to school date. The students were not asked how they felt about returning to the very hallway where their friends and siblings were killed. Since their return, many students cannot finish a day or week due to the triggers. But how can they not be triggered when they travel the very scene of the crime every day? The amount of school that these students miss is a big reflection of how safe they feel. There is a drastic difference in what grades they were getting then versus now, many just barely getting by. How can anyone be expected to learn when you consistently fear for your safety? Again in May, the school board declined the Attorney General's second offer to investigate, this time stating that it was not the right time to complete any investigation due to the criminal cases as well as the civil cases they had been named in. The county prosecutor released a statement clarifying that there was no conflict for an investigation to happen. The school board recently hired Guidepost Solutions to complete the review, although it is unlikely that we will get a complete, unbiased, impartial review this way. We continue to wait for answers and get the policies in place that we desperately need so that another tragic event does not plague our community. We need answers to be able to fix what went wrong. We are not seeking monetary damages. We are here because we desperately need policy changes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Andrea. We also have April. Ms. Ventline, would you be willing to speak?
Thank you. Oh, hello, my name is April Ventline, and I have a son who was at the high school on November 30th, and I'm here to talk about that day. After the devastation of that day, all I could think about was why. Why did this happen to our school? But after a while, though, I started to think how. How was a damaged young man able to knock down every safety protocol the school had in place? So trying to get the answers to those questions, I attended the board meetings, and when not physically possible, I watched them online. And I waited for the board because I thought the board would also want to find out how this could have happened. So I listened, and the board talked about things such as clear backpacks, ID requirements, searching bags, and that was helpful to keep out another troubled person with a weapon. But what would happen if a student does get through? And this could happen because my understanding is the safety protocols are sometimes lacking. Would the protocols currently in place be able to prevent another tragedy? Is there sufficient training of the admin that another troubled student doesn't slip through? A third-party review would answer these questions. So I continued to watch and listen to the board in hopes that they would start the process of a third-party review. In December 2021, I heard that they would proceed immediately. Next, I heard that they couldn't because it would interfere with the prosecutor's case, which she then came out and refuted. During all of this, the Attorney General offered not once, but 3 times to do a third-party investigation at no cost to the school to help the district find some answers. Not once, but 3 times the school board rejected the AG's offer, which makes me wonder, why are they working so hard to avoid the Attorney General's help? Now, because of the pressure or the loud outcry from the families and the students, the school board will be doing a third-party review, but overseen by their newly hired attorney with no guarantees they will release all the findings or be transparent. My fear now is that they will use attorney-client privilege to withhold pertinent information from the review. So I am still asking how, and after so many miscommunications and backpedaling, I don't have faith or trust that we will get a clear and honest review. And unfortunately, at this point in time, the only way we will get total transparency and change will be through this lawsuit. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you, Ms. Ventline. Next, we have Alicia Feltz. Ms. Feltz.
Good morning. I have a daughter who's at the high school. She's now a freshman. None of us want to be here right now. We have kindly and firmly asked for change, and now we're demanding it. The lack of transparency, policy change, and consistency is hindering the healing process for the entire community. It's crippling our children's education and further damaging the trust we desperately need to rebuild. As a community, the breakdown of trust began prior to November 30th, when concerning rumors and threatening behavior were essentially ignored and minimized. In the weeks leading up to that day, our children were told over the loudspeaker in the high school that the threats and rumors were not a concern and the school was safe. During that time, multiple parents kept their children home for fear of safety. When contacting the school to inquire about the rumors, I was told the school has been cleared of any threats. This was stated even though there had been no investigation, and in turn, they desensitized and diminished the threats that walked alongside our children in the hallways. As a community, we want nothing more than to trust, forgive, and heal. Oxford schools have not prioritized rebuilding that trust. There has been little to no accountability, and the efforts have been inconsistent at best. Upon returning to the school had an opportunity to proactively implement any number of safety measures. Yet the only one implemented was a requirement for clear backpacks that would be subject to search at any time. Within a week of returning to school, a child who was not allowed on the school grounds due to a violent, unrelated incident made his way into the school. He sat in class and was only removed because a student told a teacher. Only then was a new protocol implemented to include ID checks. Unfortunately, neither of these safety protocols happened consistently, and it leaves the students, including my freshman daughter, feeling unsafe around her peers daily. It affects her ability to pay attention in class, wondering if the child sitting next to her with an unclear bag alongside his clear backpack was searched. After the Uvalde shooting, another reactive measure was put into place. And for one day, the students' backpacks were searched and the students were physically patted down. Again, no consistency and no proactivity. The students and the parents no longer trust the school to implement rigorous and consistent safety measures. Parents were told transparency and communication would be a priority through the healing process. There are many examples of the lack of transparency and communication from Oxford schools since returning in January. Just last week, the school lost power and it triggered all of the metal doors through the hallways to slam shut. This was the first time the children experienced dark hallways in classrooms since that day. A massive amount of children were picked up because this was traumatizing. It went without communication from the school. The phone lines were so overwhelmed that it took several tries to reach anyone to call my daughter out. The fear and panic we experienced could have been avoided if the school had simply sent communication telling us our children were safe. And it was simple, lost power. I have considered removing my daughter from the district. I'm sure like many other parents, but that's not an option. Sadly, we are a community who experienced this horror together. Trauma, fear, and constant worry are now what bonds us as a community. Oxford needs to immediately reevaluate its safety protocols, communication efforts, and maintain consistency so that the trust can be rebuilt for the years to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Bourgo, Lori Bourgo.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to thank Graywall, Harbor Strategic for the support, as well as all of you. My name is Lori Bourgeau. I am the parent of an Oxford alumni and a student who is going to be a senior this coming school year. And both my husband and I are Oxford alumni. Oxford School District and Board and Administration has failed their staff, the community, the parents, and most importantly, the students of Oxford. They failed us in 6 main areas. First, accountability. The board and administration has been passing the blame and hiding behind governmental immunity. It started with telling us the student responsible for November 30th had no disciplinary actions warranted after he searched bullets while in the classroom, watched a realistic violent video in a classroom. And we've all seen the math test drawings. We are numb to hearing because the experts say, with no validation of who those experts are. Are they truly mental health professionals like they infer each time? Is it the school lawyer? Is it a board member? And why has it taken almost 200 days for the school board and administration to work with the experts the parents have been begging them to work with? And we still don't know if they actually are. And second, integrity. This board and administration fails to do what they tell us they will do. And they fail to act with common decency. Just look at how many times they've changed a story about completing the investigation. It's taken 5 months for them to circle back to saying they will hire a third party to investigate. But we still don't have a start date or a finish date for that investigation. And then additionally, behind closed doors, they mock the tragedy in the justice system by writing Sean Hopkins' name tag at his first meeting back in the school as counselor number 1 instead of his name, finding it amusing to make light of one of them sitting on the stand without being the defendant in the manslaughter trial. They admit this happened, but it was because of lack of judgment. They should call it what it is, a disgusting lack of respect, an obvious sign of a toxic environment, a clear lack of proper leadership, a lack of policies and procedures, and a lack of integrity. Third is commitment. Oxford's board and administration continue to fail the commitment to do the right thing. Leading up to November 30th, they stifled their own see something, say something policies. And they continue by not properly updating the very policies and procedures that allowed that day to happen. They haven't committed to starting an investigation 199 days later yet. And instead of standing by their policies and procedures, they've scrubbed their website of documents the students and parents need to have access to, such as the acceptable use policy. They give us a hyperlink to access that online. The hyperlink stopped working days after November 30th, maybe even the day of. I don't know how long it took them to pull these important documents from their website. That's what they were doing, not investigating what happened. Fourth is collaboration. They've been supporting a manufactured cover-up by shutting out any and everyone since the day of. They deny FOIA requests. They decline the Attorney General's offer to a free, impartial investigation by the state's best investigation team, a team that could influence all of the state's education and make Michigan children safer, not just Oxford children. And they took only a few days to pass on the offer of a year's worth of use of a fully trained safety dog and handler paid for by the carpenters and millwrights. The optics of that alone, are they afraid the dogs are waiting to bust them? You know, the professional handler or retired officer really just wants to get some insider information. They shouldn't be afraid of letting them in to protect our children. Give them that sense of security by having a fully trained safety dog on their first day back to school, not one that's a puppy in the process of training like they say they're going to do. Fifth, honesty. The lies keep coming. They can't do an investigation because the prosecutor won't let them. The prosecutor puts out a statement saying, "I'm not stopping you." And this is even after she had already spoke directly to the school's lawyer, telling them this already. The school moves on to another excuse why they won't do an investigation. And a few months later, those excuses are invalidated. And once again, they're back to the prosecutor won't let us. They tell us that they didn't say the AG can't be a part of the investigation. They'd welcome her to be a part of it, but decline her 3 times instead of extending an offer to be a part. In the last month, some of the students organized a walkout. The administration knew about it the night before, but they sent no communication until the kids were already on the football field. That communication made it sound like they were the organizers themselves, along with the Facebook post they put in there. "We're in this together." Meanwhile, some students were left alone in their classrooms, calling home, asking to be picked up immediately from parents who had no idea this walkout was even happening. We need honesty from the schools district, upfront, clear, concise, honest communication. And finally, trust. We have no trust. You can't fail in so many ways, pass the blame, lack transparency, and still have our trust. Trust is lost when you violate your students' constitutional rights to an education. You fail to follow the Child Protection Act. You fail to follow through on what you say. You lecture parents and students at board meetings, and you lie and you deny. You say you will, you won't, you can't. We're working on it. We've been working on it the whole time. Oh, they told us we can't, but we will, but it'll be years down the road. And oh, we hired someone, but we're not going to talk about a start date or finish date. And we have no promises that we'll give you any of that information. Trust has been broken too many times in the 199 days since our world was shattered by their negligence and a kid who had a gun in a backpack that they held while they found he was in a mental health crisis. And then they handed it back to him and sent him back to a place where he could do the most harm, the classroom with our children. Those 6 areas is where our board and administration has failed us in accountability, integrity, commitment, collaboration, honesty, trust. Those happen to be our school district's core values. Amazingly, those 6 values are still on their website's homepage. They didn't scrub those. They probably should have, because it just highlights how often they've repeatedly failed those values over and over. It's time they were held accountable, act with integrity, follow through on commitments, collaborate with the community, be honest, and earn our trust back. These 6 failures are the reason for this lawsuit. We have tried working with them directly for 199 days, and now we will ask the courts to force this change through the court order. And I just want to say, Alicia touched on this, but you might ask, why do you send your kids back to Oxford schools? It's a fair question with a very complicated answer. Our kids share that bond. They experienced extreme trauma together. They understand that about each other. They don't want to walk the same hallways or return to the same classroom they were barricaded themselves into that day. But they also don't want to isolate themselves by virtual schooling at home. And we don't want them to isolate anymore. Many don't want to change to a school where the shutting of a door affects them. Running in a hallway is just fun instead of a sign of danger around the corner. They love their teachers and they feel comfort from being surrounded by their peers who understand what they are going through. And we aren't doing this from hate. We are doing this because our children love their classmates and their teacher, because we love our community. We fight for change, to start here in Oxford, to learn, to grow, and make a difference for all of our students and our teachers. We love our hometown so much that we're willing to fight to make it safer, more secure, and support its growth. Thank you for your time.